Okay. Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm having to lean in like this, but for space. Because of this ruling, and there's a lot of confusion, a lot of questions about, okay, what does homicidal violence mean in terms of it being ruled as a cause of death in Maleah Davis's case, I'm getting ready to interview Brian Wice. He is our legal analyst, very knowledgeable in these areas. I'm going to go ahead and get out of the shot, and you can listen in and get a bit of a deeper understanding about how this ruling may impact the case. So, first of all, why don't we start with define homicidal violence?
Homicidal violence is essentially a death that occurs as a result of anything save and except for natural causes. And so in a situation like this, if there had been a finding, for instance, that Maleah had died as a result of some illness other than anything involving violence, from strep throat or from any other long, threatening, lingering illness, then the medical examiner would not have come up with the conclusion that he or she did today. It essentially means a death from anything other than natural causes.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I had pointed out earlier, but I want to make clear again, homicidal violence does not equal murder.
No, not at all. In fact, there are such things as justifiable homicides. The classic example that we think of is a killing that results from the use of deadly force, whether it's a civilian killing somebody who kicks down their front door at 4:30 in the morning, or whether it's a peace officer who shoots and kills an armed suspect. Those are homicides as a result of violence, but they are in fact justifiable homicides. What we will have in this case, as I suspect the district attorney's office will later amend charges, will be an unjustifiable homicide, which in fact is murder.
Okay. Now, and it's also one of the things I do want to point out, even though the cause of death has been determined, the specific, I believe the term manner of death means
yeah.
right, has not been established at this point. Is that necessary to move the case forward in terms of adding new charges?
No, not at all. Obviously, when we see a body in the middle of Westheimer with a bullet wound to the head, we have a pretty firm conclusion. We are not uncertain that the manner and means of death was a result of a projectile fired from a deadly weapon. In a case like Maleah's, the fact that the state will be unable to show the manner and means of that homicide really is of no moment, because the penal code recognizes that in some exceptional situations the prosecution will be unable to show what the manner and means are. And so the way that they deal with that in the context of the criminal justice system is for the grand jury to diligently inquire as to the manner and means of the homicide, and if they're unable to determine that, then they put that in the body of the indictment. And as long as they can show there was diligent inquiry, yet the grand jury was unable to determine the manner and means, they have met that element of causation beyond a reasonable doubt.
So it's still possible to see an indictment for murder, even if manner and means has not been positively established?
Absolutely, Robert.
Okay. So now that we have this ruling for Maleah, what impact do you see that having on the criminal investigation in the immediate and long term?
Well, certainly, as we've said on the air before during our coverage, it's going to be a matter of time, how long, no word on yet, before the Harris County District Attorney's Office upgrades the charges in this case from tampering with evidence to capital murder. And they do that methodically. They do that the way that we would expect any criminal case to be made, from the bottom up, with a foundation that is constructed on proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
A lot of times, and I've covered the stories. We've seen the stories a lot of times. People tend to get charged quickly. Explain why, in this case, this is a long process because of the nature of this little girl's death.
Well, as we talked about moments ago, this is not a situation where there was a gun battle in the middle of Montrose, where we have multiple eyewitnesses who can testify as to the manner and means and cause of death. This case is an outlier on multiple levels, and it's because of the unique facts and circumstances of this case that the Harris County District Attorney's Office, in conjunction with law enforcement, has to take their time. There are no style points for being first. Mm-hmm. In a situation like this, justice, as we've said oftentimes, is a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay. Explain, though, too, there was enough evidence to get an indictment for tampering with evidence, namely her corpse. So if there's enough evidence for that, why does it take longer to prove that he was involved in her death? I mean, I know it's a legal leap, and I'd like to better understand that legally.
Well, legally, on the one hand, you have tampering with evidence, specifically a corpse, which is only a third-degree felony, which only provides for punishment of 2 to 10 years in the penitentiary. Here, we are making that leap, if you will, to the highest possible charge the Texas Penal Code provides, and that's capital murder. And in that situation, you have to be able to prove that this or any other defendant did then and there intentionally and knowingly cause the death of a child younger than 10, in this case by manner and means unknown to the grand jury. That takes time, it takes investigation. The last thing that law enforcement and the Harris County District Attorney's Office want to do is jump the gun. It's like Jeopardy. If you buzz in too quickly, not to be glib, you are certainly going to wind up in a bad situation. And I think on some other level, law enforcement and the District Attorney's Office recognize that. And moreover, Robert, there's a lot of eyes and a lot of heat and a lot of light shined on this case. This little girl could have been anybody's daughter, niece, or sister. And that's all the more reason in a situation like this for law enforcement and the prosecutorial entity charged with giving the family and this little girl justice to get it right the first time.
And in terms of murder, too, when you say intentionally, that word intent is very key in a murder case. Explain that.
Absolutely, because, again, the law creates levels of culpability, of criminal responsibility, all the way from knowledge and intent, which is essentially knowing what it is that you intend to do and not being at all surprised by the outcome, on down through recklessly to negligently. And in a situation where I were to reach across this space and punch you in the face, that's not negligent and it's not reckless. That's knowing and intentional. Clearly, I'm aware of what my conduct is likely to cause. And in a situation like this, the prosecution will seek, once capital murder charges are filed, to show that this defendant intended to cause the death of this little girl by manner and means unknown to the grand jury.
Okay. Do you expect to see charges anytime soon? I know that's a little bit crystal ballish of a question, but this ruling doesn't necessarily speed up the timetable.
No, but neither does it delay it. It was certainly an essential step. They could not have gone forward in taking this case back into a grand jury unless and until they had a determination from the medical examiner that this was a homicide.
Okay, that's it. All right, thank you. And if I missed any questions on that, I apologize. I will look through the comments and try and get them answered after this. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.